Okay, today we are starting Geometry, Chapter 14, Lesson 1, and we're focusing on points, lines, and rays. I'm going to show you some vocabulary as we get started. So this would be a point. It's one point in a line or a line segment. Here is a line. A line will always have two arrows on the end because it goes on forever. And you could call this line GH or line HG. This is an endpoint. So you notice there's no line with an arrow going this way. This is just an endpoint, and it's going here, going to the right. This is a ray. So a ray always begins at the endpoint. So this would be ray MN. There's two endpoints here, but this is a line, so it keeps going. You cannot call a ray starting with N. A ray must always start at the endpoint, so it's ray MN. The last one we have here for our vocab is line segment. And you notice these do not have the arrows on each side. It means that's a fixed line. So this line segment just goes from A to B, or B to A. Okay, now let's get on with the lesson. Just kind of talked about some of the vocab. So a point is an exact location that is represented by a dot. Okay, we went over that. A line is a straight set of points that extends in opposite directions without ending. That is the line that has the two arrows on each side. Okay, so let's look at example 1. Molly drew the figure shown. Identify the figure she drew. The figure extends in opposite directions. The arrows indicate that it extends without ending. It is a line. The line is labeled with point X and point Y. There are different ways to represent this line, such as XY or XY. So Molly drew. So what did Molly draw? She drew. You can write it a couple different ways. She drew line or I usually like to do that and put what it is on top. That way it's just shorter. You can do X, Y, and then have the two arrows right there. This is really important. This does go right with the vocab we went over, but you might want to tab this page because you probably will be referring back to it for what. Here's a line, a B, a ray. Remember, we must always call a ray starting with the endpoint. And a line segment, which is fixed, just goes in between here. Okay. Example 2. Draw a figure that could be represented by CD. Well, there are no arrows on this. You notice there are no arrows here, so that is a line segment. So CD represents a line segment with endpoints C and D. So we would draw that. To look like that. There won't be any arrows because this is a fixed line. Let's look at example 3. Identify the figure at the right. The figure has one endpoint and extends in one direction without ending. It is a ray. The endpoint is A, and the ray extends in the direction of point B. So this is where it begins. So it has to, when you write it, you must start with A, and it goes in the direction of B. So you can write it as ray, AB, or I always think this is the easier way to write it. So it looks like that. So we know that it is a ray. Actually, you don't need that endpoint. It would just look like this. Okay, so that would be AB. All right, so we'll just do a couple of the guided practice, and you can do the rest with your teacher. identify each figure? Well, there's an endpoint here and an endpoint here. So it is either, you can write it as, you could write this out, line segment, QR, or you can write it as QR and put the line segment on top. So you can either write it out or write the QR and then put the actual little figure on top. This is what I prefer. Ooh, so number 2, this has arrows. So that is just a line because it keeps going on forever. So you can write it as line FB. You could also write it as line BF. Or you could also write it as FB and put the arrows right on top to indicate which one that looks like. Okay, so go ahead and look at to your teacher for more instructions.